Welcome everyone to History Gone Wilder, part of Have History Will Travel. I am your host, the Wilder Historian, and it's treason time in Tennessee. At least it was in the late 1700s. William Blount, a North Carolinian, who became territorial governor of the Southwest Territory with its capital in Knoxville, Tennessee, and later the first senator from Tennessee, was the very first person impeached by the United States government. So, in this video, I will be diving deep into the history of the first impeachment. William Blount was born in March 1749 in North Carolina to a prominent family. His father dabbled in politics and land speculation, which William, along with his brothers, would continue to do. When western North Carolina sprang up in rebellion against the eastern part of the colony because of the eastern-centric politics known as the War of Regulation, William fought on the side of the colonial governor to put down the rebellion by joining the governor's militia. Those forces defeated the rebels at the Battle of Alamance. Even early in his career, he was not above using political connections and his own position to make sure that he came out ahead in situations. As the Revolutionary War was starting to materialize, William got the position of paymaster for the New Bern District militia, while his brother got the position of paymaster for all North Carolina troops being raised to fight the British. William and his brother, because of their paymaster status, got word that the Continental Congress authorized $500,000 to be paid to North Carolina troops. William went to Philadelphia to personally acquire the money, knowing that North Carolina would also use the money to pay back merchants who supplied material for the war effort. William secured his family's payment first, before others could lay claim to the funds. The Revolutionary War was a time of high inflation, and William took full advantage of the situation by buying material for low cost and selling it high, making many enemies of residents of North Carolina who saw him as profiting off the war. As the war came to an end, he joined North Carolina's General Assembly. By this point, William was speculating in land to a great degree. He used his position in the General Assembly to open up North Carolina's western lands, now modern-day East Tennessee, to land speculation. His position also gave him better access to and first dibs in the purchasing of this land for sale in smaller parcels to hopeful settlers. The Blount family collectively owned hundreds of thousands of acres of land. He served a brief stint in Congress and would return in 1785, hoping to vote down treaties with the Native Americans, which would restrict the amount of land he owned through speculation. When he returned to Congress, he could see, like many others, that the Articles of Confederation was a weak document, and it hindered his attempts at interstate trade and his business dealings. When preparations were made to hold the Constitutional Convention in Philadelphia, the governor of North Carolina named Blount as a delegate to the convention. He was absent during most of the convention, though, deciding to work to end Native American treaties in Congress that might hurt his land speculation. At the end, he would sign the document. Because he wanted to have a stronger federal government to secure his land in the West, he was a Federalist and worked to get North Carolina to ratify the Constitution. He would then become a state senator for North Carolina and get the federal government and North Carolina to agree to cede their western lands, and Congress would create a new territory called the Territory of the United States south of the Ohio River, also known as the Southwest Territory, or the Old Southwest. George Washington would name Blount the territorial governor, and Blount would set up his capital at Knoxville. While all this was going on, two European nations, England and Spain, and arguably France, the United States, and the Native Americans living in what is now Tennessee, Alabama, Mississippi, and western Georgia, vied for control of that territory. The Pinckney Treaty with Spain formally got rid of Spain from that area, but the Spaniards kept the area in their sights. Blount was elated with the Pinckney Treaty when it was signed, because that meant one less obstacle for getting American settlers to buy his land in the Southwest. He still had two other problems, though. Native American tribes still covered the territory, and Spain controlled much of the Mississippi River. He needed to get rid of both to make his land profitable. Blount wanted to launch an all-out war with all the tribes in his territory, and petitioned George Washington and the Secretary of War Henry Knox for permission to do so. They both told him no. The reasoning is simple. Most of the federal taxes were already going to fight Native Americans, specifically the Shawnee in what is now Ohio. They did not want to start another war that would drain the country's funds. They told Blount to be on the defensive for the time being. By 1796, Blount had achieved statehood for Tennessee and became one of its first senators. Everything looked pleasant on the surface for Blount, but when one digs deeper, he was in a financial crunch. He was a Federalist, but that party focused mainly on Eastern interests and neglected the Western territories and states. So he moved across the aisle to the Democratic Republicans to hopefully capitalize on their interest in the West. Blount bought the vast amount of Western land on credit and could only get title to the land once he paid cash or hard money for it. He could not sell the land for a profit without a title to the land, therefore he stood on the edge of financial collapse. Diplomacy on the international level made matters even worse. By this point, France and Spain allied with one another against Britain, meaning that the quickly deteriorating empire of Spain got bolstered by the rise of French dominance of the area. Blount couldn't sell the land without a title to it, but he also couldn't sell the land if two foreign powers posed a threat to settlement and blocked the Mississippi River. Water travel down the Ohio and the Mississippi Rivers was an incentive for farmers to get goods to market, but not if Spain or France prevented the goods from getting past New Orleans. When Spain and France allied themselves against England, they feared that the United States might join England. So, Spain did not remove its troops from the southwest like the Pinckney Treaty stipulated. Faced with financial ruin, Blount met with John Chisholm, a well-known frontiersman and someone Blount had known for some time. Chisholm was looking to rid the Southwest, particularly the Floridas, of the Spanish. The United States government was not interested, but Chisholm thought Britain might be. They were somewhat interested in ridding that area of the Spanish forces, and Chisholm claimed he had 1,000 frontiersmen ready to attack Spanish forts. This plan sounded promising for Blount, who needed the Spanish out of the way for him to begin selling his land. Blount also met with his business partner and British subject, Dr. Nicholas Romaine. Blount told him of Chisholm's plan, and Blount hoped to expand that conspiracy. These types of conspiracy were common in the western United States. Various groups from territories and states sought to link up with or attack foreign powers to gain access to the waterways or more land. But William Blount's conspiracy would be one of, if not the most famous one. All three men, Blount, Romaine, and Chisholm, concocted a plan to launch 3 attacks. One of them would be made up of men from New York and Pennsylvania and would attack New Madrid on the west bank of the Mississippi River. Another, led by Blount, made up of men from Tennessee, would attack New Orleans. The last group would be made up of Native Americans and white Floridians and attack Pensacola. All of these attacks were intended to take place on the same day and hopefully, with British help, get Britain in control of Florida and Louisiana. Blount hoped that with Britain as a neighbor that settlers would buy his land. By the spring of 1797, Blount was getting his plan in place and hoped it would take effect in the fall. In April, Blount wrote a letter to James Carey, a Cherokee Nation interpreter at Tellico Blockhouse in Tellico Plains, Tennessee. The letter partly described the plan, and he wanted Carey to make sure the Cherokee would do as he needed. Carey, who had been told by Blount that the conspiracy was nothing more than bold talk by John Chisholm, was amazed when he received the letter. Normally, Blount would have met with his conspirators personally, but President John Adams had summoned Congress to a special session, and he had to leave Tennessee before he could meet with Carey. Carey handed the letter over to government officials, and it made its way to the president's desk.